Okay, hey guys, welcome to this live discussion. We're going to be talking about Mo Wilson. We're going back to Austin where it all started, something like a month and 10 days ago. We've got a special guest who's from Austin, Paul Walhus. I'm not sure if I said that right. Paul, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're here in what they call the ATX, the technology capital of the planet. Basically, this town is incredible. So much going on here right now.
Lance Armstrong also is from Austin, right?
Yeah, we lived through 7 Tour de France's with Lance, and we celebrated Lance, and we felt sorrow with Lance, and we went through all his ups and downs, and he had some rough spots, but he also did a lot of great things for this city and for the cancer community.
Do you know whether he's said anything about this case?
He said something on his podcast. He didn't say much, because when he was commenting on it, it was like he had just heard about it. It was just like breaking news at that moment. And he came on doing his podcast. He's got a podcast called The Forward. He doesn't live in Austin so much anymore. He's mostly in Aspen, Colorado now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's news to me. So
Yeah,
he's swapped Austin for Aspen. Okay.
Oh man, you should see his house in Aspen. He's done like Architectural Digest tours of it. It's incredible. What an amazing house. He still maintains a presence in Austin at Mellow Johnny's bike shop. That's his bike shop.
Yeah.
He cruises into town, and they've got a little podcast shack on the east side.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about you. You've been referred to as the king of Twitter. Where did that come from?
The New York Times. Well, it came from the fact that I went to South by Southwest in 1980. It was when was that? 2007. I went to South by Southwest, and Twitter just broke at that South by Southwest. So we were all going around making Twitter friends. We were the originals, the first wave, the very first wave of Twitter. It's SXSW.
What year was that?
2007.
Okay,
and so the New York Times picked up on it, and it was like a 3-way horse race to be who was the king of Twitter. It's either Robert Scoble or I forget the other guy and me, and the New York Times said it was me, that I was the original king of Twitter because I had the most interesting, the most followers, but also I had some content that was pretty cool back then. I've still got about 14,000 followers, but I keep pruning them. I've had hundreds of thousands, but I keep cutting them because you get so many bots on Twitter. It's constant battle to nuke the bots. To get down to the real people that are your real friends.
Okay, so you may see along the bottom of the screen, if you guys want to follow Paul on Twitter, he's at SpringNet.
SpringNet, right? Yeah, because I originally had a website that was spring.com, which was a virtual community. And then I sold that, and then I got spring.net, and then I sold that. Now I'm austinspring.com is my website. But my main website to find out about what's going on with Mariah and Caitlin and Colin is at touroftexas.com. Touroftexas.com.
Okay.
I'll post everything I know on there. You can go to there anytime you want, and I'll try to keep it fresh, and I'll try to put a lot of content on there.
Okay, so I'm just putting that in chat. I don't know if
that'll be the main destination. I need to.
Okay, did you guys get that? Touroftexas.com.
Touroftexas.com. Yeah, I've been letting that go too long. It was really hot and heavy during the Lance Armstrong tour days, and then I kind of let it go fallow, and now I have a reason to revive it now.
So, in a way, it's, I guess, an obvious question, but let me ask it anyway. How and why has this case resonated with you? I mean, obviously, you in Austin, it happened in Austin. When the news broke, did you drive to certain neighborhoods? Did you kind of do a little bit of your own investigating? Did you notice anything?
Not really. I mean, I go through that neighborhood where that happened all the time because I live in a condo downtown and I have to cruise out to my place in the country, you know, so I go by there all the time. And I didn't, you know, there's nothing really much, there's not much to see. And I'm not really much of an investigator, you know, I'm more kind of a geek than an investigator. I'm not like you. So I don't have your investigative skills.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did it seem to you as though, did it seem strange to you, the news saying that Colin first headed north through that alleyway when he actually lived to the south? Did that seem, if you know that area, does that seem counterintuitive, or is it not really a big deal?
I have to say, I don't know. You know, and let me kind of preface all this. I've been talking to almost the whole community in Austin. I went on the ride for Mariah that we went from downtown out to the Deep Eddy. This is the picture I took in Deep Eddy. It's called the Pool Burger place. It's right next to the Deep Eddy pool. And so at that event and since then, you know, I've talked to a lot of people, and there's a universal response among all the cyclists and people in the cycling community in Austin, and they are stunned silent. No one is talking. No one is hypothesizing. No one is theorizing. No one is getting any kind of thrill out of this terrible, awful thing that happened to Mariah. You know, it just was so out of the blue and so unexpected for that to happen to somebody on such a meteoric rise in her career, just poised, you know, to have Lance Armstrong type numbers in the women's cycling community. There's no telling where she would have gone, because she wasn't just winning races. She was like dominating races, coming in like 25 minutes ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
So everywhere you go, and I tried to gather some information for you for this show, and I called like Ian Dole, who wrote a really great article on this, and he couldn't say anything. He just said, "Well, I'm working on something a lot bigger, and it'll come out pretty soon, so I'm not commenting now." And I talked to Laura Carbonneau, who's really kind of the de facto go-to person for the cycling community, and her response was pretty much the same. You know, everybody, and, you know, there's another woman who went to college with Mariah, you know, at Dartmouth. And she has a lot to say, but she's not ready to talk or say anything, you know. Everybody's still, it's a very protracted period of sorrow and a disbelief and just sadness over this whole affair. You know, a lot of tears have been shed in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, I must say that thing about her winning a race by 25 minutes, that really stood out to me, because that's really exceptional. You know, that's a long way. So for those of you if you're not sure what gravel riding's about, I think Mo did mountain biking and gravel riding. Gravel riding is kind of like riding on gravel with a racing bike, but the tires are a little bit thicker. I'm certainly not an expert myself on it. When I fell and broke my rib about 3 months ago, the leader or the organizer of that event, he was actually riding the roads we were riding on a gravel bike. The rest of us were all on mountain bikes. So it's kind of a faster way of riding on sort of dirt roads. It's sort of the intermediate between. Timmy, shall I pick you up? Timmy's cold because I've given him a shave. As you can see, he's looking a little bit different. So I think he's just trying to get warmed up by me. I'll show him to you guys in a moment. But so it's kind of, I'm I'm trying to think if there's a similarity in skiing and snowboarding, but it's basically somewhere between road biking and mountain biking. That's gravel riding. And some of the distances are insane. I think one of them is 150 miles.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. She won
150 miles
mile race right prior to this.
Yeah. So she was a very young, like 25-year-old, but very tough and very competitive competitor, sort of world class. And we're going to go through some of Mo's backstory. What I thought would be quite a good touch would be to talk about or to read a tribute posted by one of her teammates. So I'm going to read that. And I'll also provide you with the link on Instagram so that you can look at, because I think it's quite a good way to key into Mo's story, besides her Instagram, is to look at a teammate of hers and to see what she's doing now. On that topic, something that I'm not sure if you know this, Paul, one of her teammates got engaged about 2 months, I think, before this. Actually, it's not 2 months. I think it's 10 days, something like 10 days. I think it was May the 2nd or something like that. One of her teammates got engaged, and it makes you wonder, did that have some impact on the psychology of everybody? In other words, it's possible that nobody noticed, but you would think that if Mo's teammate got engaged and she put it on Instagram, because it's actually filmed, the ring and everything, and it's actually also something that happens while they're out for a ride, her and her fiance. It makes you kind of wonder, did Colin see that? And did Mo was there some kind of chatter about that? You know, this person's just gotten engaged, oh, congratulations. And then you it basically questions you, like, what is your next move? You know, it's almost like if Valentine's Day is coming up, it's sort of really a question of your commitment. And so one wonders whether that we'll get. I'll put a link up to that in a moment. But where that teammate got engaged, did that lead to Mo thinking about things that she didn't normally think about in a more serious way? Did it lead to Colin thinking about things in a more serious way? And did Caitlin know about it as well? Because you can imagine Caitlin, of all of these people, was possibly the most wanting to because she was kind of settled down. She had the house and all that kind of thing. So you can almost imagine that she was trying to seal the deal with Colin, like, let's get married, because she's 34 years old, let's get going. And it's just an interesting thing to consider, that particular thing.
That could be at play. I haven't thought about it a lot, but just retrograding a little bit to something you said. The Belgian waffle ride on May 1st was a 222-kilometer gravel race over dirt, single track, stream crossings in Southern California. And she won it by 25 minutes. And then 2 weeks later, she flew to Austin to race the 150-mile gravel Locos, which was up north of Austin. But I don't know if that was at play. I'm not a psychologist or a relationship counselor or have a lot of skills in that area, but I think that it could have been at play. Very well could have been.
Well, I do think you're
the mystery novelist. You're the guy that comes up with these things.
You know the race where she won by 25 minutes. What is the date of that race? Do you know?
Let's see, what is it? May 1st, 222-kilometer gravel race. The Belgian waffle.
So, and I think it was
May 1st.
Yeah, and I think it was the day after, May 2nd. That's when her teammate Alison M. Tetrick. I've just put a link in chat for this engagement little clip. So you guys can check that out. But this is her teammate. Alison's got 60,000 followers. So she was obviously more, what's the word? I think she was kind of more well-known than Mo was sort of up and coming, but definitely a rising talent. And she talks about that. But if you go and look on Alison Tetrick's profile, you get an idea of kind of the lifestyle. And this is a competitor who's a little bit older than Mo, and you can kind of imagine that Mo was possibly inspired by her. Alison was also inspired by Mo, but you can get a sense of what was going on between teammates, the common psychology. I just want to have a look at Mo's profile just to make sure. Timmy, I'm going to have to put you down. Sorry.
Is that the Instagram trick? Is that it? Or am I on the wrong? That's it?
Yeah.
So Alison Tetrick, athlete, cyclist, cowgirl, professional.
Yeah.
Be bold, ride bikes, do work, explore. Yeah, link. She's got a LinkedIn.
Can you do me a favor, Paul? I can't go. I'm on a computer I don't normally use for Instagram. Can you just pull up Mo Wilson's Instagram? Just look at how many followers she's got on Instagram.
Okay.
It's probably inflated.
Yeah, Trick has 60,000 followers. Let me pull up Mo's Mo Wilson. I think it'd be under Mo Wilson. My computer's working.
When I enter it, it says I must log in. So
let's see. Mo Wilson. No results. Maybe it's Mariah Wilson.
Okay, so while Paul's doing that, something that is kind of concern with this case is right now, Mo Wilson was murdered, and the prime suspect is still on the run, and it's like this question of justice that's just out of reach once again. It's another case where are we going to see justice in this case? And we're going to talk about how Caitlin is different to Vicky White, and the psychology and the resources that play into that. But
I'm on Mo_Wilson on Instagram. It says she has 10,600 followers. That seems really low to me. I wonder if that's a fake account or something. That seems very low.
It does seem low. But I unfortunately can't look on. I can't look on this computer. It's just not. I don't do social media on this computer.
Yeah.
But if anyone else
following 906, and she has 75 posts. Gravel mountain bike racer for @I am specialized and
I think it is the right one. So, but the point that I wanted to make is just that purely on followers, and I'm pretty sure she probably got a lot of followers once this case broke. She probably got another 2,000 or 5,000 or something. The point I'm trying to make is Alison, you can see, is quite an established presence. She's quite an established racer. And so Mo would be, although she was an excellent competitor, she kind of needed to,
Oh, you went sideways on me, Nick.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Mariah's got so few followers. It's just shocking she has that few followers. That's the thing about her. She was like just at this point in history, she was just surfacing, just coming to the forefront, just on the verge of breaking through to major national prominence. And I'll wait for Nick to get unfrozen there. Nick has turned into a frozen popsicle right now, and we're hoping he'll thaw out and rejoin the show. My gosh, what do I do now? I've got to talk. I've got to keep this show running. Oh man, Nick, what happened? Anyway, maybe he has a bandwidth issue. I'll bet he has a bandwidth issue. So what else? Oh, I know. They're a really great article. I'll wait for Nick to get back in. A really great article. If you want to read a really great article about Mariah, it's in this thing called the Vermont Sports. It's at vtsports.com. And it's the Mariah Wilson, the real story, the Wilson family authorized exclusive interviews for that story. And it starts out, this story should have been written sooner. This story should have had a different ending. The story should have not have been about the tragic murder of a young woman from Kirby in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom. The story should have been about her life and her meteoric rise as a bike racer. In an interview published May 11th, Velo News called Anna Mariah Mo Wilson, 25, the winningest woman in the American off-road scene. Later that same day, Wilson was found shot to death at a friend's home in Austin, Texas, where I am right now. She'd flown to Austin the day before to compete in a 150-mile gravel race. She was the favorite to win. Hands down, she was the favorite to win. The news of her death spread like wildfire. In the national media, it became a sensational story of how a jealous girlfriend, Caitlin Marie Armstrong, allegedly murdered Mariah for having briefly dated pro cyclist Colin Strickland, Armstrong's boyfriend. But that's not the story. The real story is how this young woman from the Northeast Kingdom went from never having competed in a national bike race to the top of off-road cycling in 2 short years. On May 18th, 2022, Mariah Wilson would have turned 26. That afternoon, Mariah's family and friends biked along East Berks Kingdom trails from various directions until they all gathered at Heaven's Beach, high on the ridge line of Darling Hill. It had been raining the days prior, but that day was clear, beautiful, with just a light breeze, Matt Wilson, Mariah's younger brother, recalls. A crowd of nearly 100 gathered at the bench around 6 p.m., joined hands in a circle and raised them to the sky. Our arms were like birthday candles. Karen Wilson, Mariah's mother, remembers, her voice cracking in her first media interview, which the family granted to this magazine in late May. And it's a real long article. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but super long article, super good article, covers every aspect of Mariah Wilson's. Maybe I can post this in the YouTube feed here. Where's my YouTube feed? It's up here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, here I am in the YouTube feed. I'm going to post it in the chat here. Let's see, where do I post this? Okay. Oh, good, you're back.
Yeah,
I was not doing very well
for me.
Carrying your show along. I was trying to keep your show moving.
No, thanks a lot, man. Okay, so
help. What do I do?
A few people in
Nick sideways.
Well,
he's gone.
Remember, I said you should have a script with you, but a few people have been asking, who are you? I think I guess every now and then we must just repeat you, someone who's from Austin, and you're a cyclist as well, right?
Yeah, I'm a cyclist. I came here in 1980. You know, it was a hippie town. You know, Matthew McConaughey movie. You know, about the kids that went to high school. Everybody knows the legendary Austin. You know, that no longer exists. But I came in the heyday of Austin. You know, when Austin was the legend. You know, and now it's become this mega technological, unbelievable metropolis, you know. And there goes Nick again. So yeah, I came here in the 80s, and then I got a job in. First I was a driller on an oil rig, and I worked in the oil field. I got some land out in Bastrop County, developed the land out there, and then when tech came to Austin, I was ready because I had gone to the University of Illinois at Urbana and studied computer science and architecture and urban planning. I think Colin Strickland is an urban planner. I read that somewhere. But anyway, and then when tech came to town, I was ready. I got a job at BPI, which wrote accounting software for the Apple, the IBM, the NEC computers. All these early stage computers that predated the IBM PC. And when the IBM PC came along, we were ready for that, and we developed the accounting software, and we helped develop this strange operating system called DOS. Microsoft and IBM came to us and said, we need help with this thing called DOS. So we helped develop DOS for them, DOS, disk operating system. We had 5 1/4 disks back then. And you pushed them in and out, and there were no hard drives. There were just these floppy 5 1/4-inch discs, and you'd be constantly shuffling them in and out. So BPI became the first software company to go public in Austin. They were down on Guadalupe Street, which is also called the Drag, where my condo is right now. I'm in a condo along the Drag here, and so then I had a long career in tech. I landed a huge computer contract at a company called Semitech. They were the semiconductor consortium made up of IBM, Intel, AT&T, NEC, all the big names in semiconductors. And it was an amazing company. I did amazingly well in computer sales and computer support there for years. Helped me build my house, at 182 Clover Road in Cedar Creek, and helped me build a lot of stuff and buy a lot of land and help me out. And so it's been a long, strange trip here in Austin to get from back in the days of BPI and the early stage companies to the big corporations and the semiconductor scene till now. And here comes Nick. I got a feeling he's coming back in. Here he is. All right, here's Nick.
Paul, you can't blame me for not giving you an opportunity to state your case, right? You've definitely gotten fair play here, right?
I wasn't expected to do a monologue, but I'll try.
Yeah,
it was hard.
I don't know if
I kept it.
I don't know if you've sneaked a virus into my system or whatever, but this is the first time. Now my phone is on and it just kicked me out. So I don't know. Let's hold thumbs it doesn't happen again.
Me. I did nothing.
I'm sure it's on my end. I did catch what you said earlier that Colin, as far as I know, he studied environmental sciences. I don't know if that means urban planning, or does that tie into urban planning?
Yeah, something like that. I read somewhere that he did that. And man, is that guy bummed out? Look, he lost everything. I don't know if he's lost.
Have you seen him around town?
People have seen him. The news media got a hold of him. I haven't seen him. And I haven't talked to any of the other cycling crowd in town that's seen him. I don't know him very well. And, have
you seen him previously? Have you sort of seen him riding around?
Yeah. Just briefly, we're not best.
I think you've said, he's kind of got
about him. I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. I know about him. Obviously, he's come in the news now.
But he builds trailers or something. Isn't that quite near to where you stay? That business.
Yeah, I think he's got some kind of vintage trailer refurbishing business or something, and I've been in kind of the same business out in Bastrop of refurbishing and building up trailers. It's for rentals. I do rentals out in the country. I have this website called smallhomevillage.com, which shows a bunch of stuff. I think Colin does a lot of the same stuff. I think he's a mechanic. I think he's a trailer rehabber. I think likes to get his hands dirty.
So if you were to put a dollar figure on the shared business interest between Colin and Caitlin, what would you say it is? Because I think the property alone is something like 2 million, isn't it?
I just from what I've read, I'm not an expert on this, but I would probably, somewhere in there. Your guess is as good as mine. I think Caitlin was a realtor for Sotheby's Real Estate, and she did really well. I think her specialty was overseas moves, which how convenient is that, right? Overseas location.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Do you think the house that they were living in when this happened, do you think he was living with her, that it was originally her house, or that she was living with him, or that they got the property together? What do you think was the situation there?
I would only be guessing. It would be a pure guess, and my guess is that she was probably the brains and the motivating force behind the real estate aspect of this, and
that was my thought as well.
Yeah, that's what I guessed. And Colin is the guy that fixes things and goes out and wins races and achieves things in the sports world, And I have no idea what that guy did or what's going through his mind or whatever. It would be unfair to hazard any kind of theory about him at this point, because I don't know the guy. And and a lot of people I do know him, but they really don't want to talk about it right now. Nobody wants to talk about anything in Austin, Texas right now.
Well, I think the obvious thing that he's thinking about is kind of making a comeback, and how does he return from this? And also, is there a return from this? In other words, like, how do you get your sponsors back? How and when do you time your return to the races? It's the same thing that Oscar Pistorius kind of went through. It's like, obviously I'm going to ride again. It's just, how do I negotiate that path kind of thing? And is the public going to let me? As far as I know, Red Bull still haven't dropped him, and that's kind of his prime sponsor. And that's definitely, how can I put it? That's a feather in his cap in a way. That's, a sign that all is not lost, I guess. I think there's also the flip side. If Red Bull had to let him go, I don't know whether there'd be contractual obligations from their side. Because I don't know if you remember with Lance Armstrong, I think when some sponsors wanted to drop him, like US Postal, I can't quite remember the details, but I think he sued them, which is like, you can't just leave me kind of thing.
Yeah,
remember that. Yeah,
depends on who wrote his contract and what clauses are in it and all that. It just shows you got to think these things through. If you're an athlete and you want to protect yourself, you never know what can happen. And the worst happened to him, and maybe he protected himself by the way he crafted these agreements. I don't know. I don't know about
the folks in chat, but I'm quite surprised that this case hasn't resonated with a bigger audience. Like, this is not just about two people. Like in the Gabby Petito case, it was Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. This has gone from.
Look at this. I know why. Look at the sequence of events, Nick. Look what happened. We had a shooting, I think the day before in Austin, or right around the same time. And then just a few blocks from that shooting, there was another shooting. And then the next day, the very next day, what happened, Nick? What happened in America?
Uvalde.
What happened? Huh?
Uvalde.
Uvalde. Yeah.
Yeah.
The home of Matthew McConaughey, our favorite, the Minister of Culture in Austin, his hometown had this horrible shooting. It completely wiped every other story like this off the map, off the headlines. So if I think the story would have gained a lot more momentum if it hadn't been hard on the heels of the shooting in Uvalde. And we've had so many shootings. It seems like every day there's a new one, you know.
I also think Depp versus
wiping
Heard,
each other off the headlines. This shooting that wipes off that one, you know.
Yeah, I also think Depp versus Heard had an impact. But you know, if you compare, it seems a bit of a crude thing to say, but if you compare true crime apples with true crime apples, I guess one similar case is Vicky White, which almost like immediately preceded this case. And that was also very, caught everyone's attention. I don't know if the sort of gravitational, almost like a black hole, the gravitational force of Depp versus Heard just sucked everyone into it, and this happened while that was taking place. But I do want to talk a little bit about the main differences between this case and Vicky White. So
before you say that, Nick, can I just make one comment?
Sure.
To me, you're a mystery writer. This is probably the greatest mystery murder story. I mean, there's got to be a mini series. There's got to be a movie. There's got to be a Dateline NBC. There's got to be everything about this. This has to be one of the. There's nothing else that's so bizarre and so out of the ordinary as this, don't you think?
Well, we still got to see how it ends. Like, if Caitlin is caught, and whatever that ending is, that'll be a story in itself. If she isn't caught, then, well, you could kind of say that's just a matter of time. With regard to that, the last time that I did this, I got kicked off, so I don't know if my system is going to allow me, but an article came out today, actually a couple of, maybe yesterday. Caitlin Armstrong Manhunt, Texas cyclist slaying suspect, could be hiding in New York City. And this is from a former fugitive. This is the statement of a guy called Seth Ferranti. And he was the U.S. Marshal's most wanted between 1991 and 1993. And he actually told Fox 7 in Austin, he said, the first thing you're going to need is money. If you're going on the run, the first thing a fugitive is going to need is money, and she's definitely got that. And then the other thing a fugitive is going to need is connections. But he made some pretty interesting comments. I must say, hearing this from a fugitive, in the top 15 most wanted in the 90s, he said things like this. He said, the first thing a fugitive needs is cash. Then he also said, New York is the perfect place to hide. And another thing that he said that I hadn't actually considered was he said that Caitlin's quite a pretty girl, and you could easily have someone, if she changes her appearance, you could easily have a guy that meets her and is attracted to her, doesn't know who she is, and then she kind of gets enveloped in his life and his lifestyle and kind of gets caught up in that whole thing. He doesn't know who she is, and he can kind of pay for things, and he can loan her his car and that kind of thing. And that's definitely an aspect that's, I think, possible. I don't know if she's got any long lost loves in Michigan or the Haven or something. You never know. But it's interesting that this guy says New York is the perfect place to hide. I would have thought a place with CCTV cameras and the temptation to use bank cards and whatnot would be the imperfect place to hide. But I suppose if there are masses and masses of people and you've changed your appearance and you've gotten some kind of false documents, then you would be able to hide in a situation like that. I think the big issue with Vicky White was all they had to look for was a vehicle. You know what I mean? They just had to wait until the vehicle kind of bingoed somewhere. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. I mean, this is quite a big insight into this, how the two cases are different. Caitlin left her vehicle at home. In fact, those photos that the Sun photographer took of Colin at home, you can actually see the Jeep in the background. You can see the black Jeep kind of in the background photo.
They found that.
So the Jeep's not going anywhere. She got on a plane, and we've got no idea what vehicle she's driving, if she is even driving. So it's quite an interesting, interesting how this is different to that.
Let me say this, Caitlin, if you're out there, if you're watching this, Caitlin, the Austin cycling community wants you to come clean and fix this. You know, you've taken away, if this is you, maybe that isn't you, maybe this is somebody else, but if it's you, then you need to come clean and apologize to the Austin cycling community, because they are very unhappy, very sore. They're very sad right now.
Yeah,
there. I said
it is interesting. It is an interesting thought that she is literally out there. Is she on her phone? Is she on social media? What phone is she using? Is she paying attention to the news? When you look at the Haven, they look like folks who don't watch the news, who they look like they're purposefully turning their backs on the world, and that of course suits a fugitive. But just coming back to the main differences between this case and Vicky White. So the number one is Caitlin's not using a car. Number two, she's got potentially access to a lot of resources. We don't actually know whether she drained her account and by how much. Colin would probably know that. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe she had her own account. Maybe that joint accounts. We don't really know that. But potentially she had. If you guys remember, I think Vicky White had something like $90,000, right? And she managed to stay on the run for like, what was it, a week or two. Caitlin has got access to 10 times that amount, if not 100 times that amount. You know, like it could be as much as $1 million. Although probably not, because she would have to sell those units to get the appraised value. In fact, I made that calculation based on the appraised value you sent me, Paul. You sent me like 3 rental units. One was just under $1 million, and the other 2 were around about $500,000. Of course, you'd have to sell those, but you'd also inclined to think, well, surely rental income's coming from there. I don't know whether the authorities have the what's the word? I don't know whether the authorities have the authority to shut down those accounts. Like if she's getting rental income into a personal account, can they just close that down?
Well, she potentially could have mortgaged all of her properties and already pulled the money out of them. Yeah. That's a possibility. I have this friend, Joe Bryson. He's like Condo Joe, as they call him around Austin, you know. And I've been having some email exchanges with Condo Joe, and he said just in the last few days, this red hot Austin market has completely flipped. And what's happened is about a week, just a couple of weeks ago, you could put a property on the market and there'd immediately start a bidding war, and there'd be like 40 bids all topping each other to where it would just go off the charts. And all of a sudden, just in the last week or two, that has completely flipped. And now there's much more inventory in the housing market in Austin. And so it's different. It affects some things I'm doing right now with real estate. And
but you also in real estate, right?
Well, no, I'm not a realtor, but you know, anyway, properties are tricky in Austin, and there, by no means are we in any kind of major decline. That's not going to happen. Things are just going to keep exploding in Austin, but there's been a leveling off right now in real estate in Austin, Texas. So
from when to when,
if she planned this, she probably mortgaged all her properties, just took out loans on all of them, you know, took the money. And I don't know. How would I know? Who am I? How would I know?
But in terms of the larger economics, when did the boom start in Austin? I think they started investing in Austin in 2017. Is that right?
Yeah,
like about
much,
5 years ago.
Yeah, earlier in the 2000s, we had kind of a brief depression, you know, a brief left. But ever since then, it's just been rocketing upward, you know. And then we got Elon Musk in town now. It's Elon's town now. We're just his servants. We just run around and build cars for him and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I remember 2008, 2009 was kind of the housing bubble, and that probably affected Austin as well, right?
Yeah, it did.
But yeah, okay. But that was like way back. Okay, so just to wrap up, I just want to finish the section here. The main difference between this case and Vicky White, she's not using a car. Caitlin's not using a car, not using her car, put it that way, and not using a car that we know about. We don't know what car she's using, if she's using one. Her resources are potentially a lot more. She's also one person on the run, not two, and she's not odd looking. She's someone who, if she dyes her hair, would immediately just disappear. Her head start, I think, was somewhat more significant than Vicky's, like both in terms of the distance she put between herself and Austin, and there was also a certain amount of time before the warrant came out. I think the warrant with Vicky was a lot sooner. Bear in mind the guy that she was with, Casey White, it was like you could instantly put a warrant out for him because he was an escaped criminal. Then I think the other thing that's quite a crucial difference that's going to make finding her difficult is Caitlin's been around. Caitlin's traveled like all over. I kind of mentioned it in my previous video. She's been to, I think, Ireland, Iceland, Italy, Norway, South Africa, all over the place, and also all over the place in the US. She's lived in Michigan, she's lived in California, obviously Texas as well. And I think that's quite different to Vicky. You kind of get the idea she worked in a prison for most of her life and never really went anywhere. And so you don't really have much experience of the real world when you are a fugitive, except now suddenly it's a baptism of fire. I don't think that's the case with Caitlin.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
Raul Thomas in chat says Caitlin was a finance major and worked as a mortgage banker for years after graduating from college. Night and day.
I knew that.
Your comparison is night and day. There's so much. It's totally different situation.
Yeah. I mean, she's very well educated, and I think if you're talking about motive here, we don't know for a fact that Caitlin did this. There is a warrant out for her arrest, but if you're talking about motive, you look at how she educated herself and worked very, very hard. That is actually something a mutual friend of theirs said, that she was very goal-orientated, very ambitious, worked very hard, and I think Colin was also ambitious, but I think to some extent you could make the argument that was Colin, enjoying the benefit of the hard work that Caitlin had done in terms of making money, like actually making money. She'd kind of put together a fortune. And that's why I sort of feel like she's 34, she's worked really hard, she's met this guy. What's there left to do except settle down, get married, and live in a house and have children or whatever it is, live happily ever after. Meanwhile, it's like, are you actually with me or not, kind of thing, you know? Anyway, the final thing I want to differentiate between this case and Vicky White is I think Caitlin's got quite a good network. I think she's got possibly a family network, possibly one sibling. We don't know if there's another sibling as well. But also other people. It could be realtors, it could be campers, we don't really know. Someone asked a really good question a moment ago. Is there proof of life? That's a really good question. We were kind of turning ourselves inside out looking for Brian Laundrie, and it turned out, well, he wasn't going anywhere. I don't know whether that's the case here. I don't know whether that's the case here. Why would it not be the case? Maybe because she's got more to live for, and maybe because she backs herself. I don't know, but I don't know what you guys think. Do you think the odds are that Caitlin is wanting to end her life, or do you think that she's going to try and get away with something? What do you guys think?
I don't think she's a life ender.
I don't either.
I think that she's very, very spiritual. Her and her sister, very spiritual people, into yoga, into reading, and
it's quite ironic because when you look at Christie's Instagram, and I think you actually sent me the link to it. When you look at that, she's quite cerebral and like peace for all mankind, and the opposite of peace for all mankind is shoot someone. You know?
I think this guy Ian Dill, Dille, is working on a major article that will reveal a whole lot about this whole thing. That it'll bring a lot to light, and he's very tight-lipped about it right now. I tried to talk to him about it. He's not going to do it. Not going to talk about it right now. But I think
where would it come out?
I think it'll come out in like outdoor or
outside.
Velo News, I think is where it will come out. I think he's working real hot and heavy on that. I think that'll be very revelatory when it comes out. He's major part of the Austin cycling scene here.
Okay, well we'll check that out. Are you at all familiar with the yoga studio that the sisters kind of ran together?
What's the name of it?
I don't know. I know it's called The Studio.
No, I did most of my fitness and stuff at UT, University of Texas. I was about to become a fitness instructor. I had taken the training, and then the pandemic hit, so that totally derailed my fitness program. And I think it derailed a lot of fitness programs. Remember the pandemic we had?
Yeah. No, well, that's kind of part of the poll here, where I said, who do you blame for what happened to Mo Wilson? And to everyone's credit, well, to 65% of your credit, to your credit, the majority voted Caitlin. But I think it's actually fair to blame COVID to some extent as well, even though there's just 4% there. I think something that's really worth thinking about is if Caitlin and Colin were living unhappily together, right? In other words, if they were stuck with each other, then COVID would have sort of, from Caitlin's perspective, COVID would have been good to keeping them together, but in an artificial way. Like Colin doesn't want to be there, or he wants to do something else, and he's kind of stuck with the COVID restrictions, but he's also stuck with Caitlin. Caitlin may have kind of in a way liked that, and it may have brought her a lot closer to Colin than otherwise. But the other thing that's really interesting with COVID, and you'll know this if you very active in sport, is while COVID was taking place, you couldn't do sport. You couldn't travel to do races. There were all sorts of high-profile events that were simply taken off the calendar, like just gone. So if Colin was at some point, I don't know, in a relationship with Mo, then maybe if he wanted to continue a relationship with her, and if the way that they were kind of flirting with one another or whatever was each time they met at a race, well, then this artificially kept them apart. COVID would have kept them apart because she's not racing, he's not racing. And it was a very real thing. In a way, now it's almost hard to remember. But I had a friend who was training for the Ironman, and then the Ironman was completely scrapped. And then he was training for the half Ironman, and then that was postponed. So any athletes who were training for like proper events, proper sort of high profile events, saw them totally taken off the calendar. And then what do you do with that? Well, Colin would have probably been home much more than he otherwise would have or should have been. And that may have created this it may have artificially lengthened their relationship. So it's not a factor to sniff at.
On the other hand,
yeah.
Nick, Mo said that the COVID thing kickstarted her career because it got her out of the office. They pulled her out of the office and sent her home, and that's when she really kickstarted things. So it had different effects on different people.
And she quit her job also like 2 weeks before this happened.
Right.
And I wonder whether Colin didn't say to her, if you're serious about this, you need to invest 100% in it. I'll help you find sponsors, but you need to give this everything, kind of thing. I don't know if that's necessarily the best advice, but yeah, I mean, there are other sides to the story. In terms of the psychology of Caitlin, so if you're thinking about, if you're like doing a profile, like an FBI profiler, one of the ways to do that is you look at what job does someone do and how could that job help them in their sort of, in their fugitive status, or in whatever situation they find themselves in. And if you look at the combination of, and it is quite a weird combination, admittedly, if you look at the combination of yoga, realty, and then competitive bike riding. Now, I'm not saying Caitlin was necessarily this elite bike racer, but she did ride, and she did try and ride with Colin, and I think that is a factor. So although she's not this elite rider, I think she's not with him, or put it this way, she's with Colin because she likes the fact that he's so competitive. And I think he was with her because I think he liked her, how competitive or ambitious she was in terms of business and in terms of her work. But if you take yoga, realty, and competitive bike riding, and you say, what psychology does that imbue a potential fugitive with? Well, the answer is, first of all, yoga teaches you what to give priority. Like in terms of your state of mind and your movements, it says prioritize this. Get rid of the noise. Focus on that, right? That's from yoga. Realty is all about strategy. Invest in this market at this time, invest in that neighborhood, location. In order to be successful with realty, you've got to be a great strategic player, right? And then competitive bike racing is kind of that as well, strategy, but also discipline. You need to get out there and train. And Caitlin's not like this, just a sidekick to Colin. Maybe he thought so, but she was actually quite fit herself. She went with him on a bike tour to Iceland, right? So if you add those two together, you have someone who knows how to prioritize, someone who's strategic, and someone who's got discipline. And funny enough, this guy from who was the most wanted in the 90s, Seth Ferranti, funny enough, he also said, if you want to be a good fugitive, you need to be disciplined, right? And so I think Caitlin has that. She has that to her advantage. What do you think of that, Paul?
I think that's a pretty good analysis, Nick. I think you pretty much nailed it. I'd have to agree with just everything you said there. And I have to acknowledge you're the greatest in terms of mystery novels and analyzing crimes and all this.
Big smile.
You're the man. You're the man, Nick.
Well, I could learn a little bit in terms of tech.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I might have you a little bit in some tech areas. That's all.
Yeah, I think you use Zoom a lot, but I think you need Zoom Premium to do share screen and things like that, don't you?
We have a group that's called Office Hours. It's on officehours.global, and it's a couple of hundred of the smartest people in the world in audio, technology, filmmaking. I mean, we've got the greatest people in the world on this show. It's 2 hours a day in the morning, and then we run a after hours thing for 24 hours, and that's where I get all my tips on technology. It's an addictive show. It's very harmful for your pocketbook. It's extremely harmful for your pocketbook because they're always talking about, you know, you got to get an ATEM Mini, you got to get a Mix Pre 3, you need this, you need that. We talk about lighting and everything, you know, and microphones, everything. So if anybody wants to learn how to do tech, that's a great place to learn.
Sounds like I need to get on there.
Yeah, it's great tech. I'll put a link in the chat here.
Okay, so I want to read this tribute to Mo from Alison, her writing partner. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Mo. So this is what Alison wrote on Instagram about her former teammate. And she's not only written about Mo once, she's written quite a few times. So she writes here, all of the moments and times and peddling spent together were cherished then and treasured now and forever. The world seems so much smaller without you, Mo Wilson. Nothing seems as important as just being able to see you and witness all of your gracious and kind power. To know you are thriving in all you wanted to do. I would do anything to go back and sit on this curb with you. And so in the Instagram post, it's actually Alison sitting on the curb with Mo beside her. I must say, Mo looks really diminutive in that particular image. And then she says, share a beer, be a little cracked. You are really strong, hence we needed to share the beer. Plan your future with you, give you any knowledge I had as I could soak in your thoughtfulness and warmth. You were and are pure magical magnetic strength and humility. I've never met someone that tackled every course and task with such pure, peaceful joy and tenacity. I met you first at Grasshopper Adventure Series. I told you that you were stronger than you knew. I told you to go for it and not to look back, even if that meant leaving me behind. Power forward, don't doubt. You winning was me winning, and it still is. We became I'm Specialized teammates, colleagues, friends, and committed bike family. Your life was just getting started, and it was bigger than this world deserved.
Yeah, that's
I'm
great.
devastated.
Yeah.
I'm devastated. I'm devastated, and I pray for your family and all of us who loved you and were inspired by you. Some of the last words we had just a little bit ago were similar to what I said when I first met you. You are stronger than you know. Own it. I'm so goddamn proud of you, and I love you. You told me to keep being me, and you loved me. You being gone is a tragedy. It isn't fair. It is senseless. I still have no words, but we have for you. What we said to each other last week will always be true. Maybe the world couldn't harness everything you were supposed to be. I am angry and lost, but I'll try my best to keep being me for you. I love you, Mo. I always will. In my heart, we are still sitting on this curb or pedaling along with laughter as you charge up the hills and keep discovering more strength than ever thought possible and spreading your light and joy to all. Charge on, my dear friend. We love you. You are our family. May we carry your star with us forever. It will not be the same without you.
That's great. That's great. You know, Ian, the guy I was mentioning, Ian Dill, he said as he rode home, he thought about what he would write about his community's memorial of Mariah Wilson. And he thought about one of the speakers, Caitlin Milam, who had read a James Baldwin poem, For Nothing is Fixed. And as he pedaled the poem's final stanza, stuck with him. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. I actually lost a friend who's also a rider And in a way, I think it's the reason why I'm really covering this case. It was in October, and so when I saw the memorial rides for Mo, it made me think of the memorial rides for my friend. Also, the case in terms of my friend, he was ridden over by someone who I think was inebriated and speeding, and that guy still hasn't, even though he's not a fugitive, he's still not been at his day in court. So it's still like waiting for justice to take place. And in the beginning, I kept asking his family, when's the trial, what's happening? And now I'm sort of not even asking anymore. It's just so depressing. And so, in a way, this case, I think that's why it resonates a lot with me, but especially those last words where Alison writes, "It will not be the same without you." I must say, I've been feeling that a lot myself. I think it's true of anyone that's close to us that we lose, but sometimes you sort of feel the loss of someone that you don't even know. Sometimes you feel someone has come along that's so special. And a good example of this was another world-class athlete that I had the pleasure of communicating with. His name was Uli Steck. He was a Swiss alpinist, and just an extraordinary guy. And then his life was also cut short, and you just like feel it's almost like someone has left the earth, and the earth is the poorer for it. And I think when you grieve in a way for people known and even unknown, I think that edifies us to some extent. It makes us more sympathetic and compassionate for the people around us, family members, even strangers. But it always hurts when someone who's so strong in a way, there's almost this assumption that strong people are somehow immune, somehow invulnerable. And then it turns out that none of us are. We're all mortal and nothing is guaranteed, And it just is this weird thing with this case where someone so strong comes to this sudden end, and yet the person responsible, or the person who seems to be responsible, there seems to be no certainty about the outcome there. It seems like a very imbalanced thing. So here's another thing I think Alison wrote as well. She wrote, "Everything else feels so trivial and hard these days, so small, so inconsequential, yet so consuming and painful. But it makes me cling to the big things I trust to make me stronger and make me more whole. I cling to this love and rest on this mighty shoulder that is stronger than anything I know. Also, I can only call," and then she refers to her fiance, "my fiance for T-minus under 2 months. I probably should tell the families or plan, maybe tomorrow. Today, I still want to soak up everything good that I can, in a place that will always feel like home and safety. Love sincerely, cling to what is good and meaningful, all the emotions, all the hope, all the love." And so you've got to also feel for her teammate who has just gotten engaged, and then you have this devastating thing happen, around you, where Colin doesn't so much have a choice to kind of go back to riding. You have her teammates who kind of have to go and ride, and they do go and ride, and then they arrive at these races and there's a person missing. And I've noticed, like with my best friend, this friend of mine who died, his wife now goes and does events, and then she realizes, we did this together last year, and now you're not here, kind of thing. And just that break in continuity, that is troubling and distressing and tragic,
Very well said, Nick. Very well said. You're doing a terrific job, Nick, and at all this stuff you're doing, your books, your novels, your podcasts. You're just amazing, man. I'm just very big admirer of your work. and you're gonna solve a lot of these cases, I'm sure.
Okay, well, thanks, Paul. I put a couple of links to what I've just spoken about from Alison's Instagram, if you guys want to have a look. But just as I say, if you go through her Instagram, you get a sense of Mo, what Mo would have been doing after what happened to her. It just kind of gives you a sense of that sort of continuity.
And I'll post updates on touroftexas.com. It was originally a blog I started to cover the Tour de France, but this seems like something we need to work through as a community here in Austin. And I want to gain a greater understanding of this. I don't want to give anyone the impression that I am the spokesperson for Austin cyclists. I am not. And I don't want to give the impression that I know all there is to know about this, because I know extremely little. And the Austin cycling community is dead silent right now, just dead silent. They're not talking about this at all. Here I am talking about it, but I'm just a talker, I guess. Anyway, I just want to make that clear that I'm not the Austin cycling spokesperson by any means at all.
Got it. When I was off, Paul, when I was like in Reboot Land earlier, did you refer to the Velo News article? Because I know you were referring to something.
Yeah, I
just don't want to
referred to that Velo News article that I think it was Ian Dole wrote. I believe that was. I don't have it up on my screen right now, but yeah, I did refer to that. And there was the Velo News. Here, I've got it up here. It was on Outside. Okay. Outside is the overall thing, and then Velo News is part of Outside, and then Ian Dill, I think I got his name right that time. The article is called "In Austin, Texas, Cyclists Gather to Honor Mariah Wilson." And
were you part of that? Did you go? Did you join them?
Yeah, I had a knee injury that day, so I actually went there. I drove to the pool
venue
and then met up with them at the pool, but they drove down 6th Street. And Ian wrote that article on May 30th, 2022.
Okay.
Velo News.
Okay, so there's another article from Velo News that I found very poignant. It's from a year ago. So it's from June 4th, 2021. And it's titled "Meet Mariah Wilson, Unbound Gravel's Dark Horse Contender." And I just thought that this article really captured her spirit very well. There's there are links to her Instagram, there are quotes from her, there are all sorts of photos as well. The title photo is also a very lovely photo of her just looking into the camera, and I'd love to read the whole article, but I think someone wouldn't be very happy if I did do that. But I'm just going to read the end here. And this is where she's kind of asked, she's asked about her training and her racing. And she basically says, beyond my actual riding capabilities, I'm pretty comfortable with being very uncomfortable. I love to push myself to the cusp of what I think I'm capable of, and then try to dig a little deeper and see how long I can hang out in that space for. So she's obviously had this really incredible mental strength. And then at the end of the article, she says, you have to have the mental strength to withstand 10 plus hours of pain. This is within the race setup. You can't control for everything, and I think that makes the field of contenders larger than it would be if the same riders were to compete on a different course with fewer variables. And so this race that she's talking about is called Unbound. It's 200 miles. It's a real monster. And it goes on to say, The COVID shutdown of 2020 gave many rising pros like Wilson time to focus on building base miles. Exactly as you said, Paul, that COVID actually was a kind of a springboard for Mo. And it may not have been a springboard for certain other established athletes, gave her a chance to catch up in a way. It held the others back, but it gave her a chance to kind of springboard. Anyway, I thought it was actually in this article, but I'm not sure if it is. But she was asked whether she regards herself as a contender, and she responded quite humbly. She said, "I think I'm more of a dark horse." In other words, she was saying, "I'm an unknown quantity. I'm not definitely going to win. I'm just someone that is possibly going to be a dark horse." I thought that was just really interesting what she said there. Oh, here it is. She said, also a great quote from her. She said, "I've noticed that in life in general," these are Mo Wilson's words. She says, "I've noticed that in life in general, and particularly in cycling, women like to sell themselves short. They count themselves out too early and are generally eager to diminish their capabilities. I don't want to be like that or to perpetuate that tendency. I've been very competitive with previous winners of Unbound in past races. So even though there are a lot of things about this race that are new to me, I guess I would still consider myself a contender. Maybe better said, a dark horse." I just thought that's definitely, you just get a sense of who she is in that particular statement. So another thing that
there are a bunch of reporters from Court TV at that Mariah's little service we did for Mariah. When we rode from downtown from Federal Square down to the Deep Eddy Pool, and they were going around asking questions. There were cameras everywhere. No one was answering the questions. No one was talking. No one was saying anything. They couldn't get any information out of anyone. Everyone was so totally stunned at the sequence of events. That's how it hit. That's how hard it hit Austin, Texas. And it's still hitting us really hard because this is not the Austin I know. This is not the ethic of people in Austin that I know. And I've been here since 1980.
I think it probably has something to do with there's another rider that is or was, I'm not sure, but Colin is also someone that was very well known and well liked by the community. So if you say something about the one, then is it something against the other one? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's very difficult to let's say be honest, because you sort of feel like someone's going to get hurt, or someone else could get hurt. And I think that, because I remember with Oscar Pistorius, I remember the same thing, because I wrote quite a few books on that case. No one wanted to talk to me about that case. And the reason was you had a lot of people who were, just remember, Oscar was a brand ambassador, just like Colin is in terms, he's a sportsman, but he's also a brand ambassador. Reva was also a brand ambassador, but on a much lower scale. And so anyone who's talking out, if they've got any links to sport, and if they do have a link to sport, they probably, in other words, if they have links to sport or to sponsors, the higher those links are, probably the better their relationship with Colin and with Mo. Do you know what I mean? And so they can then jeopardize their relationships, and they've probably been told by their sponsors, say nothing, don't get involved, or else, or whatever. You know what I mean? They've been told, say nothing, because in the end, the sponsors want to have this negativity disappear, kind of thing. I just want to thank, before I forget, I just want to thank some of those who've contributed super chats. Quite a few have already, and I normally acknowledge it, but thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, Yvonne. Sorry about the ones that I've missed, but I know a couple of you did. Anyway, just let me say thank you for that so long.
There are some really
Margaret
awesome
Zabinski.
comments. Really awesome comments in the chat. A really great stuff, you guys.
Paddy Dunn, thanks very much. You said that was a beautiful tribute from Alison. Much love from Ireland. Paul and the cycling community, we lost our great friend Michael a couple of years in an ultra race in Australia. It was such a loss. You know, cycling does seem to be a sport where, because you're on the road, you know, like on the athletics track, you don't lose someone. But cycling is something that happens on the road, and it just seems to have a higher, I hate to use this word, but body count than a lot of other sports. I've personally been riding where someone has a fall in our group, and it's like that person survived, but it was like life-threatening. And I don't know how many sports there are where that kind of thing is so present. Maybe climbing Mount Everest, but certainly is quite a high risk sport, cycling. High injury. Sharon Tuck, thank you as well. Have you had any bad injuries, bad falls, Paul?
Not on a bike. I've never had a bad fall. Well, I think I fell one time on a bike, and I ride mostly off-road dirt bike. I've got a Trek 4500. I've got 5 Trek 4500.
Car racing, yeah.
Yeah, and no, not really. And you know, and when I go around the streets of Austin, I'm a super cautious guy. I go back alleys and on sidewalks and avoid all traffic at any cost. I know every place to go to get away from traffic, where, you know, and it's interesting where I live, to go downtown, it's all downhill down to Town Lake, and coming back, it's all uphill. So I get my workout coming home, not going to downtown. We've got some terrific trails and bike trails in Austin all over the place. Just one of the best biking places on planet Earth, Austin, Texas.
That's like music to my ears, because I feel like if I'm gonna move, because like I'm kind of considering moving to perhaps another country, transplanting, and so whenever I hear about bike paths, those are like the magic words. That's why I quite love the Netherlands. When I was there, I was riding on the bike paths they've got there, but the scenery is somewhat limited. It's not a terribly huge country. There's certainly no big climbs there. But it's why I've always wanted to go to Boulder. But the fact that Austin makes me definitely feel like I'm planning on doing a trip to the States. I think I'm going to have to check out Austin.
You're going to be a big hit in Austin, Nick. I know it. Just know it. You'll love the biking scene here. It's just terrific. Despite of this one incident, we have a terrific group of people here who bike everywhere in Austin, and it's just part of our fabric, bicycling in Austin, Texas.
Do you have bike share there, like where you can pick up a bike and then, or someone sent that to me, I think it was on Patreon, maybe to somewhere else like Alabama or something, but that's also really amazing, where they just let you pick up a bike and ride, and then I think you've got to check it in somewhere after an hour and then you go again.
We have that. We have that here, but it's nowhere near as organized or as idyllic as you just portrayed it, because these things, people throw them everywhere. They'll throw them around. They'll throw them in the streets. Sometimes people they throw them in Town Lake.
Yeah, I actually heard in the Netherlands, when people get, like, if you're riding your bike and it's like the bike is sort of really old and it's had it, then they just throw it into the canal. Yeah. And as a result, the canals have like been piling up with bicycles inside of them, you know?
Yeah, people throw these rent-a-bikes, these electric rent-a-bikes in the lake. They don't take very good care of these rent-a-bikes, I'll tell you.
Thanks a lot, Rose Brown.
You know, but you know, what's the point of an electric bike? How am I going to get any exercise on an electric bike? You know, I want pure exercise when I get on a bike.
Well, I can answer that question. I did a 3-day mountain bike event that was incredibly, for me, it was incredibly tough. We went over a mountain range called the Swartberg Pass, and I basically, just to give you just a short little explanation, there was like 9 kilometers of kind of climbing, but like really felt like 45 degrees, maybe to 30 degrees, I don't know, but it was really tough. And there's like, I was determined that I wasn't going to kind of get on the bus. I wasn't going to kind of cheat my way to the top. But I started suffering from heat exhaustion. It was just really too much. My muscles were cramping. And when I came around this one corner, I was like looking for the road, like, is the road going to be there? And instead of looking there, it was like, there. The road goes up there. And I was just like, this is, I can't do it. I just actually can't do it. But there were other people who came with electric bikes who were able to stay on their bikes. They didn't have to get off and push. And I've heard that people who are adamantly against e-bikes once they ride it, but I think it's more for more senior cyclists. It just allows you to ride further and the sort of terrain that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. And I think that's
yeah, I can see some use cases for it. Yeah, this is what it looks like when I go swimming in the morning in Barton Springs. The sun comes up over the city, and we've got this beautiful spring-fed body of water right in the middle of town. And
yeah, and that's the other thing I love. I'm a swimmer, and I love open water swimming, and I think I'm coming to Austin.
Best swimming hole, and I challenge anyone anywhere on planet Earth to find a better swimming hole than Barton Springs. I know that sounds audacious of me to say that, but man, what a great place. I go at 6 in the morning. It's free. You don't have to pay to get in. You just walk in, you go swimming, and you can stay as long as you want. It's great, you know. Barton Springs, it's called.
It's in Austin, right?
Yeah, right in the middle of Austin, in Zilker Park. I think I have another picture of it here.
When I first researched this case and I heard about Mo and Colin going to this deep eddy pool, and then I started seeing pictures of the pool. It's like right next to the river. I was like, that's so cool. It's like this. You can train.
This is deep eddy. Yeah.
Yeah. You can train. You can kind of fool around. Just sort of casually splash around. And then you've got the river right there. It looks so idyllic.
I'll get a glass of water so you can see it better. I'll be right back, Nick. Don't go away, okay? Don't leave me.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's look at some of your comments here. Cindy says the cycling community is probably still in shock, grieving. Something like, Cindy says, be sure to check out Austin as one of your possibilities. We have the water and trails here and music. Okay, Cindy. Cindy, do you know Paul by any chance? Pauline says they are uber expensive. Yeah, e-bikes are very, very expensive. Jean Carroll says it fosters a love for bikes for anyone who may be extremely strong to ride, who may not be extremely strong to ride. That's absolutely true. Pauline says my son uses his Peloton bike several times a week. He's on it on the toughest workout, 30 minutes. So it's really good to hear that there are folks here who are into cycling. It's really good to see that. Bria says people use bikes for transportation in Europe, get places faster, no parking, and cars are expensive. Riding bikes is also quite a big thing in South Korea and Japan. Quite astonishing in a way how many people are kind of doing their thing. I was fortunate when I lived in South Korea. I lived near a place called Horseshoe Lake Park. I think they called it Horseshoe Gongwon. And everyone there just rode bikes and rollerbladed, and it's lovely having communities like that where those are connected places where it's nice to be part of the urban fabric. Where it's built around people on foot or people on bicycles, not people in cars all the time. But it's good to see so many people in this community that are into that. As Jensen says, we had that in Vancouver for a fee. Very orderly from what I can see. Okay. There's a comment, Paul, do you know there's someone here called Cindy, aka Skinny, who is from Austin? I don't know if you know her.
Oh yeah, I know Cindy. I know Cindy, sure.
Okay.
I think I know her. Well, I know of a Cindy. I don't know if it's the same one.
She says the cycling community in Austin is probably still in shock and grieving. Something like this is so shocking. Oh, it definitely is. It definitely is.
I think I said that over and over. That's the resounding message I hear from the cycling community in Austin is that they're stunned into silence and grieving, and it's just overwhelming. Just one part of the wave of violence that's engulfing us in America.
It feels like a lot has been happening in Texas as well.
Texas has been hard hit, and the response has not been good. Let me put it that way, without getting too political.
Stephanie says, Nick as a new cycling buddy in Paul when you come to the States. Okay. Yeah. When you cycle, how far do you go? And do you go on a mountain bike, or what do you normally do? I know you said you hurt your knee.
Yeah, it's just a minor thing. I go mostly around the city, and I live right next to the University of Texas, and they have some bike trails over there. And then on the other side, we've got this beautiful system of lakes and rivers, of which Barton Springs is a part, with trails all along these waterways. We've got some beautiful, and we have some great urban cycling trails, And when I'm downtown, I always end up at Mellow Johnny's. It's Lance Armstrong's it's a bike shop and a cafe at the same. You can get a smoothie and all kinds of cool bike gear. And then they have something else out on South Congress that I've been meaning to visit. It's called, what is that called? It's where Colin hangs out.
It's called The Something.
The Meteor.
The Meteor, that's it, yeah.
I looked at
it's also menu. Like a coffee shop. Yeah.
I looked at their menu. It was awesome. I got to go there, check it out.
Yeah, I must say the bike shops in America seem to be like amazing. Like I've just watched the tour of Switzerland, and I was thinking I'd really like to buy a canyon bike, the road bike. And I don't think you can buy it in South Africa because they don't have any agents here. So if I went to the States, I'd probably go and check out the canyon bikes, but the other bikes as well, like Felt and Falcon and so on. I've got a Specialized. Have you ever thought of doing the Cape?
They're good bikes. Yep.
Have you ever thought of doing the Cape Epic? Have you heard of the Cape Epic?
No, just now I heard of it. I just heard of it just from you right now.
Well, do yourself a favor when we're done talking. Go into YouTube and search Cape Epic, CAPE, and then next word EPIC, and it's a really hardcore but beautiful race in South Africa's Cape Province. It's in the south. It's weather a bit like California. Something I wanted to ask you. I've heard how great Austin is, and Cindy says Barton Springs is best to swim on New Year's. Isn't that quite cold?
It's always 68 degrees. It's never different.
Okay.
It's constantly, because it's a spring fed. This is Barton Springs in the picture behind
okay.
me here. I should move out of the way so you can see it. That's Barton Springs. And
wow, okay.
It's always 68. And you see that white thing there? There's a diving board near there, and there's a really deep hole where you can dive down about 24 feet. And there's all kinds of fish and salamanders and aquatic life. And the water is crystal clear all the time. It's continually flowing. And a funny thing that happened is that something happened to the diving board, and somebody wrote a comment this morning on somewhere on Facebook or something that said, you've got a $60 million a year budget, and you can't get a new diving board for 2 weeks. You know, that's one of the highlights. I've got some pictures of people diving. You know, it's great. So hopefully we'll get our diving board back.
Yeah, well, who knows? We have maybe worse problems here where I am, but although something that I think we've got that you don't have, can you go for a ride and ride past like giraffe?
No, I've never seen a giraffe. And
So
I've never
if you
heard it pronounced that way either.
If you come visit me, I'll take you for a ride where you have a really good chance of bumping into a couple of giraffe, zebra, and so on. So I'll take you for a ride on the wild side.
Great, sounds great. I can't wait. I can't wait till we really start traveling again.
Yeah, it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen. I must say that's another thing that's quite an interesting dimension to Caitlin is they sort of opened the gates recently, right? They've opened the gates to travel. And so obviously when more people are traveling, you'd imagine the gatekeepers are a little bit less attentive. You know what I mean? Because so many people are being processed, you don't necessarily pay that much attention. So, you know, the floodgates definitely have opened to Europe, travel to Europe, but I think also inbound in the States. So all of that, I think, makes it harder to find Caitlin. You know, that's the impression I get.
All you have to do is look for a yoga mat. She carries a yoga mat with her everywhere.
Yeah, that's well put there. Terry says, Nick and Paul, how much of Caitlin's motivation could be that she couldn't cut it as a pro racer and Mo was on her way to the top? Terry, I kind of see that as in a different way. I'll give Paul a chance to share his thoughts on that. But my impression was I don't think she wanted to be a pro racer. I think she wanted to sometimes ride with Colin, and I think she wanted to be like his companion. Because he was world class, it was like, okay, you're holding me back. And I think I see it kind of almost in a reverse way. I see it from Colin's perspective, where I think Colin is like, sorry, not Colin's perspective, Caitlin's perspective, where she's thinking, here is someone who's 9 years younger than I am. And obviously, Colin is going to be very intrigued and interested and attracted to her for all sorts of reasons. She's this rising star. She's younger. She's got this bright future ahead of her. They meet on the same playing field, as it were. And, you know, she's an inspiration, and his job is kind of similar, but his job is also to be an inspiration, not necessarily that, but to ride well, you know, like a brand ambassador is always trying to inspire other people. And Caitlin kind of doesn't quite fit into that whole thing. She's like not part of that game. She's not part of that setup. And so she probably felt, I think, she's worked so hard in her own way. She's worked so hard to build a life in her own way, just for this person to come out of the blue and completely seem to, what's the word, like capture her boyfriend's interest. And I think she resented that. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know what you think, Paul.
I think that I'm sorry, I was distracted there by my Twitter feed. That's what Twitter does to you, Nick. You get distracted. I was looking at Chris Walker replying to my comment just now about what Caitlin looks like in airport setting with her yoga mat, her long hair, and all that. I would say maybe there was. I think she had enough going on that none of this needed to happen. She had a lot going for her if she did it. I'm in by no means saying she did it, but if she did it, then she had too much going on to get sidetracked like this. She had everything going for her, and Colin had everything going for him. I hope he recovers. I hope he gets straight and gets it going. I'm sorry. I got distracted by my Twitter feed, looking at my Twitter feed.
Is it blowing up?
Not really blowing up, but it's having a mini explosion. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
A minor explosion.
I think that is quite an interesting question. Is what are the feelings now? Does Caitlin, whatever actions were, does she regret them? And and I think it's like a double-sided coin. I think the one side is the person who shot Mo shot her 3 times. That's definite intentionality. You know what I mean? Not only that, taking the bike and then moving it 68 feet away, that's added intent to that, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's the one side of it. I think the flip side is you might be a month later thinking, wow, where's my life now? Was it really worth giving all of that up for hanging out in a tent or wherever she is, right? It kind of makes me think about when I fell and broke my rib, how things take place that are partly by design and partly just an escalation of events. So in a way, so I obviously didn't kill anyone, but that was an extreme thing to happen to me. But I think part of it was inevitable. And every time I ride my bike now and I notice how my hands become quite numb quite quickly, sometimes I don't really even grip the handlebar. I don't close my hand around the handlebar. And that kind of makes me realize you sort of you lose concentration to an extent. And I know I was very tired, and I know I was run down in certain other ways. And I know I was distracted. I was putting the bottle in with the cage loose. And if I hadn't been tired, I would have fastened that thing. And then after you've fallen, and I suppose you can compare falling on the ground like I did, literally, to someone falling when they commit a crime. It's like a fall from whatever position they were in. That they fall kind of into the darkness. They give in to the dark side, kind of thing. But there are other factors that are agitating towards that: stress, lack of sleep, and in her case, she may have known Mo was coming and feared that, only to have that fear realized, and then something kind of takes over. I mean, at the time that I fell when I was riding kind of on adrenaline. There were 2 guys who were riding quite quick, and I was trying to keep up with them. So I wasn't just riding and I fell. I was in some kind of thing. I was in a race and I was trying to keep up. And then I kind of lost concentration. I think in a weird way, Caitlin was in a race with Colin. She was trying to keep up with what he was doing. And it felt like someone was going to sort of take her place in that race. She was going to be kicked out. And there's a sense of I thought we a team. I thought we are in this together. I thought we partners. Meanwhile, the reality is we're not. And then there's this sense of anger and betrayal, And so how is she feeling now? I'm sure she's sorry. Because, there was another way of dealing with it, which is she could have spoken to him and could have gone their separate ways and lived somewhat happily ever after. But of course, if you don't have those commitments and you haven't made those investments, then you don't know how hard they are to give up. You don't just do that and give them up.
Yeah, if she did this, I always preface it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
She needs to talk to the Austin community, the cycling community, and tell us what happened. Either way, she owes us an explanation, an apology, even more than that, really. She needs to do something to counterbalance this. I don't know what she can do for humanity to counterbalance what she's done, but if she's done it.
Yeah. I'm really surprised his sister's Instagram is still up.
Yeah, maybe she forgot it was there. I don't know. Usually those things go away when something like this happens. But that was pretty amazing to see it because of the spiritual path that the two sisters were on, or that are probably still on. Such an anomaly in a spiritual person's path. And they were clearly very spiritually oriented with yoga and veganism and travel.
That's such a great point. That's such a great point, because on the one side you kind of have these possible soulmates in Mo and Colin. I don't know whether Colin was definitely the right person for Mo, but certainly superficially you have these super cyclists that are interested in one another, put it that way. But then you have this other side where you can definitely see an unusually strong relationship between these two sisters, between Christy and Caitlin. That's the other side that I think is not very appreciated thus far. They have an unusually strong relationship, and funny enough, the brother isn't mentioned anywhere. I think his name's Matt. Caitlin's brother Matt. I think his name's Matt, but you never hear about him.
Poor Matt.
Yeah. Yeah.
He gets swept under the rug, I guess.
Yeah, but who knows? He may be part of things in a way that we don't understand. He may be more part of things than we realize. I mean, think about it. We don't even know what his Instagram is, so one doesn't even know where to begin in terms of him. And we know that she also had some kind of connection to him because she's going to invite him to come and work in Austin. So it's not like they were estranged. They did have some kind of bond as well. So that's another area that's still kind of unknown. Something else that I think I realized today for the first time was that I think Caitlin, I think the crime actually took place at around about 8:38 or something like that, 8:37, 8:38. So almost like the moment Caitlin went into if it was Caitlin, the moment that Mo went into the house, within about a minute, I think she was shot. And the incredible thing, and it's really sad, the incredible thing is that it looked like Mo was alive when another Caitlin came home, Caitlin Cash, something like 80 minutes later. And it kind of makes you wonder, she was alive, but she couldn't call for help. So what had actually happened to her? She was obviously seriously injured, but she was nevertheless alive. I don't know. It's just the whole thing is a heartbreaking thing to consider. But the other side is,
I don't know if we'll ever know. We may never know what happened in those.
I think there will be a trial ultimately, and I think then things will have to be testified to. I would be interested to know who arrived home first. If Colin arrived home first, then it's like, well, where have you been, or why are you late, or did they not talk to one another? Did somebody go and have a shower immediately? What was the conversation when they were both home that day, kind of thing? And also when she left, what is the last thing she said to him? I'll be back. What did they say to one another, you know?
Yeah, I think it'll be different than the OJ outcome where we'll never know. I think that if this does go to some kind of trial or something, I think we'll probably find out exactly what happened. I would think. Maybe not. You never know. We may never hear from her again, ever. That's a real possibility.
Pauline says, sometimes family think they are helping a loved one by encouraging them to stay hidden or not take responsibility. Lessons should be learned from Brian Laundrie. Yeah, that's definitely quite interesting. Although with Brian Laundrie, his parents certainly didn't kind of overtly come forward. It does make one wonder what cases are being thought about here. You can kind of imagine that because of the yoga background, yoga definitely comes up in Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie. Like there's a scene on Instagram where Gabby says Brian's doing yoga. And I think that quite a lot is quite similar. They're into especially with Gabby and Christine, there's quite a lot of similarity in where they go to the national parks, the yoga stuff, I think she even uses hashtag nomad life. And so that whole idea of being an influencer and trying to make a living that way, although the one is a 30-something and the other one is a 20-something, it's the same free-spirited mentality that ends up being quite naive and quite dangerous in a way, because that free-spiritedness takes you so far and then you end up in a situation of codependency. Isn't that what happened here?
Yeah, that could very well be. Are there any recordings of Caitlin ever, of her speaking or talking?
Someone said to me, there's that in one of the posts from Christine, you can hear giggling or laughter in the background, but nothing besides that. I must say that's a really good point. Is what does her voice sound like? So if she's hiding her identity, she's changed her hair, whatever, what does her voice sound like? That may be a good way to recognize her. That's really a good point. Yeah.
Didn't all her social media just disappear?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're approaching the 2-hour mark. I want to thank my guest. We don't often have men on the show. In fact, I'm not sure if since I've been True Crime Rocket Science, I'm not sure we've ever had a male guest. So well done. A first, it's always good to have a first. When we were Shakedown, we did have a couple of...
too badly.
Yeah, no, you actually held the fort. So, you know,
I had to.
Kudos to you.
You went sideways on me, Nick.
Yeah. Okay, but thanks a lot for being here, and we may be doing it again, depending on how things pan out. So maybe we'll see you again.
Let me put out an appeal. If you're in the Austin community and you know something that I should know or want to relate it to me. If we do this again, then I can relate it to Nick and have a greater understanding of this. I'm not a spokesperson for the Austin cycling community. I can't emphasize that enough, but I am interested in what the truth is here and nothing else but the truth. That's all.
And if you want to speak anonymously, then you can do that as well. Terry says, I'd love to know the interactions when they arrived back at the condo that night and where they were when they were told of Mo's death. Yeah. I'd also like to see the police interview. That I'd be very interested to see. Will we? I guess we'll see. Paul S.M. Kovalinsky says, excellent live, Paul, and a lot of praise coming from chat. Thank you, Paul and Nick. Raul Thomas says, thanks for sharing, Paul, as well. And Bria says, thanks, Paul, such a hoot. I must say, you do bring a nice sense of humor to these shows. I'm usually deadly serious, so good to get a little bit of humor come in.
You're the greatest, Nick. You're the greatest mystery writer of all time. Enough.
But thanks a lot. I don't know if you've read any of my books, Paul, so I don't know if you can say that.
I've read blurbs on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
I looked at all of them. Yeah, and I did read some excerpts.
Casey says, tuning in at the end. Sorry to miss, Casey. I'm sorry you've come in right at the end of the end, but maybe you can watch the replay. Yvonne says, thanks, Paul. I hope people come forward. Zircon says, we can hear her voice during the deposition if we get to hear that. So I don't know if the authorities are watching. That is something that is a possible aspect, which is if she's changed her appearance, maybe it is important to put a voice out there, because people's voices do tend to be quite distinct, quite idiosyncratic. And it's much harder to, in a way, it's much harder to disguise your voice than your appearance. Certainly all the time. You might do it a little bit here and there. Another one that's quite interesting is also handwriting. That's another one that's quite interesting. Pauline says, yes, he does good live. Okay, so I think we're going to end there. Paul, I think your, I don't know if it's your wife. I heard that she's saying, when is it almost over?
So, did you hear that, really?
Yeah, I did hear that. Is it almost over, please?
She wants to go somewhere. She wants to.
Is it okay?
Moving a bunch of furniture to our place out in the country. She wants to get on with it. But I've really enjoyed hanging out with you, Nick. It's
been good.
Really been good.
And when I heard your voice, I thought we definitely need to have you on. So I'm glad we have. Sorry about the technical. I've never had. I think in a way, maybe I was nervous, but I think I've never had this kind of technical. Not only did my phone die, but my phone threw me out when I came back on. So I think you must have done something to.
I did nothing. I did nothing.
Okay.
But it was fun doing a monologue for a while.
Yeah, no, and you held your own. You definitely held your own. So great stuff. Okay, I just want to thank the mods that are here. Quite a few of you, Bria, Sharon. I don't know if Stephanie's still here, but Jean Karras as well. Thanks, guys. And then all the members, and I see Paul's also a member. Thanks you guys for being here. And then also thanks for the super chats. Really appreciate it. We're obviously going to be continuing to watch this case and see what happens. We're a month and 10 days, and this fugitive from the 1990s also said it's just a matter of time. So we'll see what happens. Okay, take care. Enjoy your outing with your wife, Paul, and see you guys next time. All the best. Ciao.
Great show. Thank you.